This is a guide on how all redstone components work, starting off with Redstone Dust. It has two versions, you can right click it to change it. The one version can connect to nearby blocks, the other doesn't. If it is not directly looking at a block, it will not power it. It can go in all directions and can have corners. It can go above blocks, but as you can see, the middle one here will not be connected to anything. It can go above blocks, but not above transparent blocks like grass or also slabs or such things. Here it can only go up, but not down again. This is very useful for some cases. It can go up to 15 blocks. After that you need to power it with a repeater again to continue the cycle. You can also make some ladders with glass, for example, to move it upwards. This does not work downwards. A redstone cannot power another redstone dust through a block, but it can power, for example, a redstone lamp or piston. This does not work again with transparent blocks. Transparent blocks being like leaves or slabs or stairs or similar things. It cannot power something above it, but below it, and even one block below it. There's a very interesting interaction called bud powering, where if you, for example, power this one, this will only extend if it is being updated by, let's say, another block. This will also not retrieve again unless it is updated again. It can also be powered, for example, from kind of in the air. This might look like it's in the air, but generally it's just one block above another, just that the models are way smaller. It can go upwards or downwards if there is a transparent block above it, but not if there is a full block above it. It can also be used like this if there is a transparent block. Moving over to the Redstone Torch. It can power on all four sides and also the block above it. It cannot power the block next to it, even if it is on a wall. If it is on a wall, it can still power the block above it, and also, obviously, the one next to it and below it. A redstone torch can be deactivated by either another redstone torch or by just a normal signal. It can again not pass through transparent blocks, and it can also not power the block beneath it. For example, in this circuit here, it can power this top block, and this top block powers the redstone next to it. Moving on in the inventory list is the redstone block. The redstone block powers anything that is next to it or on top of it, and also below it, so anything that kind of connects to it. I want to mention that you cannot power something like this. It has to be connected in some way, so corners don't work. It can be pushed by a piston to activate other things, which is sometimes really useful. Just watch out if you're trying to move it upwards, because then it will be powering itself and it won't retrieve. A redstone block cannot power through other blocks. It can also not power transparent blocks. It will deactivate redstone torches, but redstone torches cannot deactivate a redstone block. Those cannot be deactivated, by the way. And you can also open chests from below. Moving on to the Redstone Repeater. The Redstone Repeater can be powered from behind, but not from the front. It can send signals through walls, like the redstone, but unlike the redstone, it can also power itself through a wall, and also the redstone in both directions. It cannot again power transparent blocks, and the main thing about it is that it can extend signals. I have added myself a texture pack with which you can see the strength of redstone. This will also be useful for the comparator. As you can see, even though it's here at 11, it could be at 1, it goes back to 15. The redstone comparator is also really useful for delaying. This would look like this. This here is 0 delay, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Here again you can see that it won't go backwards, and then that it just goes forwards. You can also lock a position with a redstone repeater like this if it goes on kind of the other side. So by showcasing this, for example, this right here would be locked and you cannot change anything with it. For example, it could also be locked like this and you can't change it. Also, redstone repeaters can just power a block and then, for example, let the redstone underneath go further. Comparators. Comparators' main thing is that it detects if something is in a chest or other storages. If the chest is empty, it will not output a signal. If it just has a little amount amount of items, it will just send a small signal, and if it is full, it will send us full signal. This obviously depends on the type and amount of items you put in it. It can also function similar to the repeater, that it just sends along the same signal as before. It will not go back to 15, it will, as you can see here, go from 10 to 10, or here continuously at 7, which can also sometimes be really useful. Here, for example, would be a nice ejector drop, which just ejects all items if you put them in there by detecting it, then making the signal as strong as it can be, 15, otherwise it would sometimes just be 1 and then not work anymore. Then it repeats itself by getting activated again, and then the target block makes it so that this here gets activated and spits out the items. It cannot really be activated from the outsides, but there is a really interesting interaction if you happen to have stronger or less strong signals from both sides. This kind of works. You have an addition and subtract mode. As you can see, there are some things, I haven't used it a lot yet in my contraptions, but there are some things if you need a specific strength of a signal. Moving onwards to one of my favorite new additions, the target block. The target block's main thing is that it can redirect redstone dust, which means normal blocks here wouldn't be powered, but the target block powers this. You can just lay something like this over here and the target block will be activated. It can also be used as a target for tridents and arrows, and it will send out a signal depending on where it landed and what landed and such things. You can also achieve a bullseye for an achievement. Here we have the different types of activation. First we have a lever, this just always stays on. Then we have a wood and a stone button. The wood button is longer than the stone button, and it can be activated by arrows and tridents and players, but the stone button can only be activated by players. Here again a similar thing. A stone pressure plate can only be activated by players and mobs, while the wooden pressure plate can be activated by everything, also items. Then here we have the lightweight and the heavy pressure plate. The lightweight counts one entity as one strength. So let's say we have one item and a different item. Then with 2 strength, and then with us it would be 3. As you can see, for example, this counts as any entity. And here you have groups of 10. This is mainly used for mobs and other stuff. Next we have also one of my favorite blocks, the observer. It saves me a lot in redstone contraptions, due to its really fancy function to just send out one tick things, which make pistons spit out a block just once, for example. For example, I've used that in the design for my block switcher, which you can see in the info card. It is really fancy and it worked with the observers. So yeah, if you want to see more redstone, just subscribe. Alright, continuing onwards from the chainless plug, the observer can also be used as kind of a repeater, like this, so it just has a longer time to get over there. The observer is really simple, but the main thing it does is just detects if something is happening in front of it, and then sending a signal, a redstone signal of 15 out on the other side where the redstone thing is. We also have Skulk on our list. This detects if a sound is being played, and the redstone signal depends on what sound is played. There are big lists of what sounds emit which strength, and also good to mention is that wool prevents the Skulk Sensor from hearing anything. The Calibrated Skulk Sensor has a double the range, faster detecting, and the input strength changes the sounds which can be heard. For example, me flying around here and placing blocks can be heard by this one, but not this, because placing blocks is not a strength of 14. For all the strengths, again, have a look at some lists. They are on Google, or, you know, find them anywhere. Next we have the hook. The hook always works with string, so it won't really do anything if you place one here and one there. You can't put a string between there, you need at least one space between. It works, as you can see, like this. It powers the block it is at, and not the block below, for example, the string. It powers it as long as you're standing in it, and this can be useful for traps or parkour, but for traps I really recommend using Skulk Sensors instead of this, because, you know, everybody can see this, but Skulk can be literally behind walls if they aren't wool. Next on our list we have the Lectern. Yes, this is a redstone related thing. It emits a really short signal every time you turn a page, but if you add a comparator, it depends on which side you are to which signal strength it sends out. Maximum of 15 again. There's a formula on how many sides you're gonna need for which strength, but that doesn't matter. Just have a look at the book you're using and what scenario you're in. Then we have the daylight sensor. This also has a night function. This will detect at night how dark it is, kind of, and obviously on day how light the daylight is. Then we move over to pistons. The normal pistons cannot grab blocks, they can just push blocks, and the sticky pistons just retrieve them as well. Powered sticky pistons cannot be moved, as well as some other blocks, for example obsidian, they can not be moved, and there are certain blocks that work in certain ways. There's obviously also some lists of unmovable blocks and such things. If you, for example, move this observer right here, it can power this once. This is just one use case of something like this. It can push 12 blocks maximum, and this same thing occurs for the next block. Here, slime block, you can use 12 blocks maximum. It can push blocks that are on it, but not if something is like this. It also doesn't really matter if there is something that is unmovable next to it. It just it can't move if it's, for example, here in the ground, because that would be infinite blocks and it can't push that. It also works kind of with honey blocks. Honey blocks work in the same way, just that they don't interfere each other. Next we have dispensers and droppers. The difference is that dispensers can, for example, fire arrows, and droppers, as they say, droppers always drop an item. This has also an interesting interaction that, for example, for chests right here, a dispenser will just throw it out, but a dropper, it doesn't just drop items on the ground, it can drop items into chests. Same goes for this here, for example. This here wouldn't work because I have wool in here, it just doesn't drop anything, but here with the dispenser it drops out. So you just gotta, it's a bit, you know, with the names it's a bit weird. Then next we have the hopper. The hopper sends item into storages, for example, or into other hoppers. A hopper can be locked, which prevents it from either sending out more items or even collecting them. For example, here this one is powered, so it just stays in there and wouldn't send it onwards unless you unpower it, then it would send things in there. It can also be detected if it is powered or unpowered by an observer. And as I also mentioned in 2 other of my videos, they're in the info cards, that if you drop something onto mod and there is a hopper beneath it, it can pick it up. This is really helpful for example, sugarcane, or, well, I can't place it yet here because I don't have water, but bamboo, for example, you can place bamboo on this and make a farm. This right here would be a farm like this. As I said, info card for the tutorial of this is, you know, in the info card. Alright, continuing onwards with the last stretch. Thank you for being here. If you're still here, we have the Chiseled Bookshelves. These will emit a signal depending on how many books, enchanted books, are in there. This varies from the positions and how many are in there, so you might want to read into the things like that on the, I think there are 2 versions now, I believe, one with ads and one without. I think the one is like the fandom and, you know, the Minecraft wiki. Just use the better one. They're the same one, just without ads. Use the one without ads if you just want to look up values for this, for example. Then we have the Composter. The Composter sends out a signal, again here with a comparator, depending on how it is filled. The same thing goes for the Cauldron, just that it sends maximum of 3. Then, yes, right here, the rails are also considered redstone in the redstone tab. I haven't covered like boats and armor stands because you know those are just kind of redstone. I'm mainly covering the main redstone types. So as you can see, the normal rails can take turns, all the other types cannot. And a perfect setup would be, for example, this, that you use your powered rails as a normal thing and then have a turn. Powered rails can be powered by redstone to make the thing go faster. If you try to drive on unpowered rails, you will be very slow. But if you drive on powered rails, you know it, you go really fast. If it stands on a detector rail, it will give off a signal. There are also different variants of minecarts. For example, the hopper minecart can pick up items from below, or the chest minecart can have items in it, or this furnace thing can or this minecart with furnace can be powered by coal to drive faster. This feature right here also works for farms, which I've covered in this bamboo video. Some last things, for example, right here we have the redstone lamp. It can be powered to turn the light on. We also right here have the redstone ore. If you step on it, it emits a signal. This can be used as a trap in caves or wherever. You can use this, is quite fancy. It also deactivate. When it deactivates, it also sends out a signal. Then you have your wood and iron variants here. The iron ones can only be opened by redstone signal. So this was quite a big chunker of a video. I hope you like it, and yeah, watch some more. I got a playlist on screen right now. See you there.